Thank you, friends. Just another gentle reminder before we begin, if we could please take a moment to have our cell phones turned on silent. Officiating our service today is Rabbi Ellen Kensky and Rabbi Nate Crane from Beth Hillel B'nai Emunah. In addition, we're also honored to have here with us Cantor Matan Meital.
We will start with reciting Psalm 23. You have it in English in your handout. I will be reciting it in Hebrew. If you wish, please join. There are several melodies, and I was toying with which melody to use, but I think there's a melody that's used at the end of Shabbat that hopefully most of you know. And the reason I chose that melody is because traditionally, at the end of Shabbat, well, let me take a step back. Traditionally, during Shabbat, we as Jews have what we call an neshama yetera, an extra dose of spirituality, which then leaves us, departs, at the end of Shabbat. And I think it's very fitting that a bright soul, a bright presence like Gitta, who has left us, that we use a melody that symbolizes such a powerful and spiritual departure from our community. So if you know, please sing along. Mizmor leDavid, Adonai roi lo echsar, Binod deshe yarbitzeni, al mei menuchot yenaleni. Nafshi yeshovev, nafshi yeshovev, yancheni b'maglei tzedek leman shemo. Gam ki elech בגיא צל מוות לא ירא רע כי אתה עמדי שבתך ומשענתך שבתך ומשענתך המה ינחמוני תערוך לפני שולחן תערוך לפני שולחן תערוך לפני שולחן נגד צורריי דשנת ושמן ראשי דשנת ושמן ראשי דשנת ושמן ראשי כוסי רוויה אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי ושבתי ושבתי בבית אדוני ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים.
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. God has me lie down in green pastures. God leads me beside the still waters. God guides me on paths of righteousness. God revives my soul for the sake of God's glory. Though I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no harm, for you are with me. Your staff and your rod do comfort me. You set a table in sight of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall abide in the house of the Lord forever.
From the book of Ecclesiastes. L'kol zman ve'et l'chol chefetz tachat hashamayim, et laledet ve'et lamut, et l'ta'at ve'et la'akor natua, et laharog ve'et lirpo, et lifrotz ve'et livnot. To everything there is a season, and a time for every purpose under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to slay and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to cry and a time to dance, a time to throw stones and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace and a time for solitude, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to discard, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time for silence and a time to speak. From Proverbs. Eshet chal miyimtza, v'rachok mipini michra, batach balev bala v'shalalu aksar, gamaltu tov v'lo ra kol yemei chayeha. A woman of valor is treasured above rubies. Her garden flourishes by her efforts and by her good judgment. She girds herself with strength. She stretches out her hands to the needy. With her gifts and deeds, she honors all in her home. She clothes herself with strength and splendor and faces the future with cheer. She opens her mouth to speak wisdom, to speak the teachings of kindness. Set before her the fruit of her hands, and let her deeds praise her.
Ribono shel olam, Almighty God, Lord of the living and the dead, the hearts of your children who mourn are heavy with grief. Give them comfort. Help them to remember the triumphs and the joys in the life of Gitta Fajerstein. Help them to treasure what is theirs because Gitta lived. Help them to meet grief with courage, to confront the angel of death with life. When despair threatens, when faith falters, sustain us all, O Lord, our refuge and our strength, our ever-present help. And let us say, Amen. It is in great sadness that we come together this afternoon to bid farewell to Gitta, a most beloved sister, mother, grandmother, great-grandmother, aunt, relative, and friend, a most treasured and beloved member of our Jewish community. Gitta Sarah in Yiddish and Hebrew was just as her name implied. Gitta, goodness, and Sarah, princess. Gitta personified and embodied goodness, radiating warmth and goodness to all around her. And in her refinement, her graciousness, her culture and dignity, she was Sarah, a princess in Israel. And like the first Sarah, she was a true matriarch for her family. Gitta touched her family profoundly and contributed greatly to our community. She will be sorely missed by all of us. but as her life was a blessing, so will her memory be for a blessing. Gitta's life story was one of survival of our people's darkest days, of resilience, of nurturing several generations of her family, of moving forward, but at the same time holding on to memory. Gitta shared with many in our community the story of her family surviving the Shoah against all odds. Gitta was born in Berlin, the older of two daughters born to Aaron Yaakov and Hannah Horowitz. Gitta's sister Chaya survives her and is with us today. Gitta's father was a rabbi, and several of her ancestors were illustrious rabbis. Gitta was born in 1930, just a few years before the Nazis came to power. And when she was a young girl in school, the Nazi persecutions closed in on her family. After Kristallnacht, her father was rounded up and taken to a concentration camp to be sent home in a coffin. Gitta's mother took her daughters and left Germany. Fleeing the Nazis, they went to the Netherlands, Belgium, and then France. And when France was occupied by the Germans, they fled south, eventually crossing over to Italy, where they hid in the mountains of the Piedmont region. Some of Gitta's story was written up in the book Out of Chaos, Hidden Children Remember the Holocaust. There, in an entry that Gitta wrote, entitled The Boot, Gitta tells the story of her return to the Italian mountains after the family's plan to escape to Rome had to be aborted, and Gitta was sent to alert her family in the mountains of their return. Gitta vividly describes walking up a snow-covered mountain, her boot getting caught in the snow and eventually falling apart. Gitta wrote, "All I wanted to do was just close my eyes and stay there. I don't know what kept me from giving up. Maybe it was the thought of my mother, or perhaps someone was watching over me." Gitta's great inner strength comes through in that story. That inner strength was to be with her to her last days and help define her long life. Gitta's story continued. After the liberation of Italy, Gitta and Chaya connect with the Jewish Brigade, which fought alongside the British Army, and they made it to Palestine, where they spent 2 years in the Ben Shemen youth village. But their mother had gone back to Belgium, and they followed her. There one day, on the beach at Knock, near Antwerp, the beautiful Gitta caught the eye of Sam Fajerstein, whose family had survived the war in Belgium. Sam wooed Gitta, and they were married in Belgium in 1950. Sam had already begun working in the United States, and Gitta joined him in Chicago. A new chapter in Gitta's life had begun. Gitta and Sam lived on the South Side until 1967, and then moved to Wilmette. They soon joined Beth Hillel, where Gitta has been a revered and beloved congregant all these years. Gitta and Sam were avid competitive bridge players. They traveled widely, especially to visit family in Belgium. Gitta traveled to Israel many times, most recently in 2017. To Gitta, friendship and community were extremely important. She had many solid friendships, and she enjoyed going out for coffee, teas, card games, and lunch dates with her friends. She was a member of book clubs and read voraciously to the last weeks of her life. Gitta spoke 7 languages: Yiddish, Hebrew, German, French, Flemish, Italian, and of course, English. Gitta pursued higher education. While raising her children, she completed her high school equivalency, then earned a bachelor's degree at Roosevelt and a Master of Social Work degree at Jane Addams. She worked as a social worker at Temple Sholem, where she served as a program coordinator. At the same time, Gitta gave of herself, volunteering in the Jewish community. She held many offices in North Shore Hadassah, including the presidency, which she held for more than 1 term. Through her work for Hadassah, she expressed her great love for Israel and her appreciation for the youth village that had taken her and her sister in after the war. Gitta was a steadfast supporter of CJE, JUF, Shalva, and Youth Aliyah. And of course, Holocaust education and memory were an imperative for her. She visited classes at Solomon Schechter to tell students her story, and she shared her story of survival at the Illinois Holocaust Museum. Gitta's beloved Sam passed away young in 1985. Some years later, Gitta was introduced to Oscar Walchuk. They were married in 1991 and had 17 good years together until Oscar's passing. I remember how they complemented one another and pursued joy in life. Together, after loss, they affirmed life. With all her community involvements, first and foremost was Gitta's family. Gitta was a most loving, devoted, and caring mother to Ron, Dan, and Becky of blessed memory. She emphasized the importance of Jewish education to her children. She introduced them to culture, taking them to museums. She took them on summer trips to Europe. She took special care of Becky, who was diagnosed with diabetes as a child. Their mother-daughter connection was especially strong. Gitta was utterly devastated at Becky's passing, but she held on as she felt an urgency in being there for Becky's children. Continuing the traditions learned in her own family, Gitta created a warm Jewish home. In Gitta's household, Shabbat dinners were always special, with delicious food and delicacies. The Shabbat dinners were a magnet for grandchildren and great-grandchildren. As one of Gitta's granddaughters shared with me, it was at her Bubby's Shabbat table that she felt she learned Judaism. Gitta forged deep bonds with all her grandchildren. In her, they felt they had a second mother. They called their Bubby every Friday before Shabbat. Their visits with her were always special. And in the next generation, Gitta excelled as a great-grandmother. She connected with each of them individually. She had long FaceTime calls with them. She was totally playful and relaxed with them. They, in turn, looked forward to every visit with her. Her beloved great-grandchildren, Connor, Judah, Elon, Charlie, Orly, Jack, Noam, Max, Henry, Thomas, and Everest, were indeed blessed to get to know her. Gitta is mourned deeply today by Chaya, by Ron and Kyla, by Dan and Victoria, and by Michael. Mourning their beloved Bubby today are Rachel and Roy, Brittany and Joel, Ariel and John, Adina and Marie-Louise, Sasha and Matthew, Sam, Jacob, and Avia. Mourning their beloved aunt are Ari and Katie, Judy and Steve, and Miriam and Mark. Gitta will be sorely missed, but she left us, and especially her dear family, troves of memories to hold on to. She has inspired all of us with her story of survival, of resilience, of the continued affirmation of life, and her deep loyalty to our people's heritage. The strong bonds that she forged with her family will never be extinguished. In this week's Parashat Tetzaveh, we read of the eternal light that was to be lit in the tabernacle and that the Israelites were commanded to build in the wilderness. Gitta's life will shine brightly as an eternal light for her family, inspiring generations. May the soul of Gitta Fajerstein, Gitta Sarah, Bat Aaron Yaakov V'Chana be bound in the bond of everlasting life. Tehi nishmatat tzrura b'tzror hachayim. Amen. Now call on members of Gitta's family. First, her son, Ron Fagerstein.
Mom, all of you know how my mother was a fighter, incredible strength throughout all of her life. She had the will to survive. Whatever it took, she kept going and continued on, always believing in the future. Mom certainly showed that during the last couple of weeks, staying with us as long as she could, reaching out to say goodbye to as many friends and family members as she possibly could. Some of my first memories are of Mom bringing me to Midway Airport in Chicago to watch planes taking off. She often took us to museums in Chicago, New York, Antwerp, Brussels, anywhere we would visit. We would spend summers in Knokke on the Belgian seacoast. Those are some of my fondest memories growing up. Getting to Belgium was also a fun journey in those days. My mother had to keep track of us running around ships or on beaches, as occasionally I just went missing. She let me do things that kids just don't get to do today. My mother had her own set of standards, like making our dad stop the car when we were kids in the back seat of the car and having me run into a restaurant to see if they had white tablecloths. Otherwise, she wouldn't go in. So we just continued driving on to the next restaurant. Then there was the issue of the location of a table. It couldn't be by the kitchen, and it certainly couldn't be by the front door. She was very particular about everything. Until the end, nothing could keep my mother from striving for a better future. Mom was always active in Jewish life, president of Hadassah, co-director at the Senior Center at Temple Shalom, active with JUF, the Holocaust Educational Foundation, and so many Jewish organizations. Mom cared so much about Yiddishkeit. Jewish life was incredibly important to her. She would often ask me if I remembered to lay tefillin on any given day. Yes, Mom, of course. I will continue on with this tradition and always honor your wishes. Mom loved her children and especially loved her grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Family was so important. Ensuring that our Jewish traditions were being preserved and passed down was extremely important to her. Despite any hiccups along the way, my mother's love was always unconditional. Even from the hospital, Mom was giving instructions to her helper to buy orange juice, almond milk, cereal, cookies for me while I stayed at her place. When I would visit and stay with her, my mother would insist on making her famous brisket, even if she had to supervise her dear assistant to help in the kitchen, Mick. I will miss your visits to Florida, where you loved sitting on the balcony and having morning coffee. I will forever miss those days with you.
Now call on Gitta's son, Daniel Fajerstein.
I'm going to start with a cute story. My mother just died 48 hours ago, but Tuesday afternoon, my daughter Sasha picked up her youngest from school, and she got him in the car, and Sasha said to Henry, "I have sad news for you." He said, "What happened?" I said, "Well, Booby died." He said, "Oh no, did she forget to look both ways?" So anyway, I really do feel like this is a story, whenever I'm feeling blue, this is something that will light up my face with a smile. And, when I think of any of my mother's children, especially our dear departed sister and her daughter, Becky, and I think my brother would agree with me that her face lit up more for her than for either of us. Anyway, but when her grandchildren, I'm going to read them again, Rachel, Brittany, Ariel, Adina, Sasha, Sam, Jacob, and Avia, and great-grandchildren, Connor, Judah, Ilan, Charlie, Orly, Jack, Noam, Max, Henry, Thomas, and Everest, her beautiful sister, Chaya. She always lit up. And Ari, Judy, and Miri, and obviously everybody else. But, if I'm going to name everybody, I think we'll be here too long. So, anyway, none of us would have ever walked the face of this world, this beautiful world, without my mother's intense survival instinct. It's difficult to enumerate all her close brushes with death and risks she took to ultimately come to the States and have this amazing family. But a few of her near brush with death experiences: surviving Kristallnacht and its after effects, walking in fear to school in an environment where Jews were randomly beaten, their hair pulled, men having their beards pulled off their faces, the windows of Jewish businesses being broken and shops vandalized, her father being killed in a concentration camp, being 9 years old with her 5-year-old sister, and without her mother, being smuggled by a stranger from Germany to Holland. Enduring long walks in the freezing cold, surviving German bombardment in rat-infested Belgian basements, trying to escape by boat from Dunkirk to England without success. Being taught that Germans might drop poison gas bombs, and if that occurred, they should grab the nearest cloth, urinate into the cloth, hold it onto their face to breathe through. Surviving on little food and being the family's designated grocery shopper at age 11. Passing border controls with false papers and enduring arrest, needing to know the details of her fake identity. Sleeping in horse stables outside of Paris. Hiking over the Italian Alps in summer clothes with approximately 1,000 other Jews in what turned out to be a futile attempt at liberation. Losing her boot in the snow, not being able to walk, and fearful that she would die on the side of a frozen, snowing mountain. Hiding under false pretense in 2 separate convents in Rome. Going to the pre-Israeli state, Palestine, and being a student at the now famous Ben Shemin School. Her survival instinct carried over to Thursday of last week when the palliative care doctor suggested she would be gone in 2 to 3 hours. She survived another 5 days until Tuesday of this week. Her heart finally quit, but her soul and spirit live on. Mom, I'm in awe of your ability to survive and to thrive. Mom, I am forever grateful. Mom, blessed be your name.
Now call on Gitta's son-in-law, Michael Beer.
I knew Gitta for over 50 years. In 1973, she was a very gracious but rather wary hostess to Becky's English friend from the Ulpan in Israel when I was passing through Chicago. She was gracious. She brought me into the house. But she kind of wondered, what is this Englishman really all about? In 1976, when Becky and I really got together again, she realized we were serious. And she kind of warmed to me over time. And then in 1977, Becky and I decided my graduate studies visa was going to expire. And the right thing to do was to go downtown and hop on the L in the middle of a snowstorm and go downtown and get married at the county building, which we did without a ring, without any witnesses, just the two of us. And we even had a quick last bachelorette lunch together at the Italian Village because the judge was going to have her lunch. We came home to Wilmette, and we had told Sam before we were married. He said, Mazel Tov, in his office. We took the L. That was, by the way, the day the L going in the opposite direction fell off the tracks at Lake and Wabash. But we went back to Wilmette, and we walked into the house, and we said, we're married. And Gitta said, oh, no, you're not. Not until you have a proper Jewish wedding. Becky, you sleep upstairs. Michael, you sleep in that room. And in the middle of the night, Becky came down. And I think Gitta turned a blind eye. 4 months later, we had a most amazing wedding at Beth Hillel, which many of you remember being beautiful and just so full of ruach. It was gorgeous. That Becky had really not had a tremendous amount of time to design, but it was mostly Gitta who created it and contributed significantly to the ruach. And then over time, she helped Grandpa Sam warm to me too. He struggled a little bit, but she helped him with that. And then she supported and helped Becky and me and our growing family over many years, two of whom, my daughters, Rachel and Adina, are present here today from New Jersey and from Berlin. And Ariel is stuck in London, but her heart is definitely here. Then when COVID hit, Gitta came and stayed with Becky and me in Glencoe for a while until she couldn't bear it any longer. We had our little bubble, but she really missed her morning coffee on the balcony and her other groups of friends in the in the condominium building at 1616 Sheridan. And then in 2020, when Rachel was having her third baby during COVID, Gitta graciously accepted that we were going to move and leave her behind and move to New Jersey. And that was the reality, and we did it so that we could be close to Rachel when she gave birth to, and support Rachel when she gave birth to Noam. And then together, she and I mourned the loss of Becky. And then in 2023, after I met my girlfriend, Susie, she accepted Susie with the graciousness and love that she exhibited her entire life. She accepted her into the family. And we were lucky enough to have many Shabbat dinners, both at Gitta's condo and at Susie's house in Highland Park together over the last months, or year and months, and for which I am forever grateful. She taught me so much. She truly was an Eshet Chayil. She was wonderful.
Now I call on Gitta's granddaughter, Rachel Beer Pasternak, who will speak on behalf of all the grandchildren.
Bubby. Bubble. You were so much more than just a grandmother to all of us. You were really a second mother, a confidant, and a guiding force in all of our lives. A glamorous and invincible matriarch with a loving spark for family was unmatched. She didn't just teach us the importance of family, she lived it. Bubby was the glue that held our family together, instilling in each of us a deep and unwavering love for one another. Her devotion to family was foundational to who we all are. As her descendants, we proudly carry the legacy in our hearts. The theme of responsibility, kindness, and caring for others dominated our childhood and shaped who we have become today. Bubby's voice, her stories from her childhood as a 9-year-old, fighting for not only her survival, but for her 4-year-old sisters as well, is woven into our internal fabric and shapes our actions every day. A 19-year-old woman who, upon arrival to the United States, spoke no English and was ridiculed by passport control for saying her home address was at the YMCA, the Young Men's Christian Association, marched forward in defying the traditional sense of what it meant to be a woman of her generation. A devoted mother of 3, a wife of a busy diamond jeweler, an active community member, and profound upholder of Jewish traditions, she still carved out time and energy to excel in her educational growth. As if her plate wasn't full enough, and particularly so with all the extravagant parties she threw, fondue, banana flambe, and etc., she flawlessly prevailed with pursuing her GED, bachelor's degree, and MSW. She practiced as a devoted social worker until most recently when her very last patient passed away. Her wisdom and passion for Judaism were evident in everything she did. Bubby's fervor for life, her boundless energy, and her belief in the importance of a community resonated deeply with all who knew her. At the end of every week, Shabbat, never missed, brought family and friends together in the warmth of her radiant and aromatic home. There was also this welcoming aroma of chicken soup, brisket, and/or chicken leg drums, homemade kreplach, flourless chocolate cake, and great-grandma Hansha's apple cake. Those dinners weren't just meals. They were moments of connection, love, and tradition that we will carry forward for generations. She most recently was texting us on WhatsApp about how to make the most perfect chicken soup and brisket when we didn't quite get it right yet. Bubby was an ambassador for the world with a heart that embraced everyone she met. Her enthusiasm for life, for Israel, for learning, and for connecting with others was contagious. She was the epitome of a glamorous socialite, always the center of attention in every room, and the social chair of our family gatherings. Her warm hospitality, charm, and infectious spirit made her the center of our universe, both for friends and family alike. As grandchildren, we couldn't go anywhere without someone acknowledging her. Even when I was most recently at the Hadassah Ein Kerem Hospital in Jerusalem, my family received a presidential tour of all of her charitable contributions, and especially to the establishment of the pediatric oncology ward. Who could forget the slumber parties after Shabbat dinners, when we would all nestle into cozy blankets with laughter filling the air, and the breakfast in bed moments in the early hours of the morning, or lunch dates at Neiman Marcus with tea and puff pastries, where Bubby's love for fine things was matched only by her love for spending quality time with us. And of course, we can't forget the special Wednesdays when Bubby would take the three girls out for a weekly dinner to Eulin's, the Thai in Port Clinton Square, or any of the other places of our liking while making memories that lasted a lifetime. Summers at Bubby's house were magical. The endless hours spent swimming in the pool, on alligator floats, river rat inner tubes, races to the deep end, and laughing under the warm sun with cherries dangling from our earlobes are memories that we will forever treasure. She gave us the gift of time to relax, to be together, to laugh, and to love. But beyond all these wonderful moments, it was Bubby's inner beauty and concern for others that truly made her shine. She had a sparkle in her eyes, a radiant warmth that lit up every room she entered, and a genuine love for all of us, especially her grandchildren and great-grandchildren. She played with us, nurtured us, and showed us the true meaning of unwavered love. Bubby's legacy will live on in all of us through the lessons she taught us, the love she gave us, and the joy she brought to our lives. We will continue to honor her memory by cherishing family, seeking knowledge, and living with the same passion for life that she did. She has passed on the torch of matriarchy to the next generation, and we love you, Bubby. You will always be in our hearts.
And now to speak for all of the great-grandchildren, I call up Charlie Kreiselman.
Can I move this so we can see?
You stand right here.
Okay.
Bobby was the best great-grandma in the whole world. Every time we went to visit her, the moment we walked in the door, she'd greet us with the biggest, happiest smile. And then she'd give me the tightest, warmest hug that made me feel like I was her whole world. She loved everyone in her family so much, especially my mom and all of her kids and grandkids, but I think she loved her great-grandkids the most. When we came over, he'd always have a little present for us, and then she made sure we had treats to eat, which was the best part. I remember Henry loves grapes so much, but my mom doesn't let him have them very often because he eats them too fast. But Bubby, she always had grapes for him. Henry would get so happy, and I think Bubby knew exactly how to make us smile. And Bubby would always say yes to as many cookies as we wanted, even if my mom said no. Bubby's house was like a magical place where she wanted everything to feel extra special. I'll miss Bubby a lot. The last thing she ever told me and my brother was that she loved us, and that made me feel so good. And I told her I loved her too, and so did Jack. Bubby, I love you so much. Bubby, I love you so much, and I will miss you forever. You were the best, and I am so lucky you were my great-grandma.
Please rise for the memorial prayer.
If you'll indulge me just a few moments, I feel very fortunate to have joined Gitta's family by marriage through the cousin side of the Beer family. And our kids, too, felt like great-grandkids of Gitta's, and she said that she viewed them and saw them as her own as well. And as luck would have it, Gitta and I met before I had the privilege of joining the family through our mutual love of Jewish music when I had my first concert here in Chicago after I moved from Israel at Beth Hillel. She was the one organizing it from Hadassah, and we met there and we clicked right away, and who knew that we would one day be family. And she still came to my concerts, and we cajoled her and her family over to Shabbat dinners when that's a hard thing to do, as you heard, because she always had them over at her place. And wonderful memories, and we're all heartbroken. So with that being said, we will recite the El Maleh Rachamim for her memory. And please bear with me if I am a little emotional. El Maleh Rachamim שוכן במרומים המצא מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה במעלות קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים לנשמת גיטל שרה בת אהרון יעקב וחנה בעבור שאנו מתפללים ביד עילוי נשמתה בגן עדן דמנוחתה בעל הרחמים יסתיריה בסדר כנפיו ליום ויצרור החיים את נשמתה, אדוני הוא נחלתה, ותנוח בשלום על משכבה, ונאמר אמן.
El Malay Rachamim, exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure to the soul of our beloved Gitta Sarah, bat Aaron Yaakov Vechana, who has gone to her eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May her soul be bound up in the bond of life. May she rest in peace, and let us say, Amen.
Friends, you may be seated for a moment. Friends, this does conclude our service here at the chapel. Interment will take place immediately at the family plot at Shalom Memorial Park in Arlington Heights. Upon return from the interment, the family will be sitting Shiva at the Fajerstein residence, 1616 Sheridan Road, Unit 8G. There will be 3 minyanim as well that I want to mention. They're not on the folder, they are on the website. This evening there will be a meeting at 6 p.m., Saturday evening with 7, and Sunday at 1:30 p.m. If you can make it, that'd be really appreciated. The times for the rest of the Shiva, the hours, as well as memorial contributions in Gitta's memory, which can be made to Hadassah, Chicago, North Shore. That information is on the service folder that you received on the way into the chapel. If you did not receive one, there's several available on the way out. And for those who are online, that information is on the funeral home website. For those who wish to join the family in procession to the cemetery, one will be forming just outside in our parking lot. Please make sure you obtain an orange funeral safety sticker, which can be placed on the inside passenger side windshield. For an additional measure of safety, we'll be placing magnetic flags on the rooftop portion of their vehicles throughout the procession. While driving a procession, please make sure that your bright light hazard lights are both on at all times. Please drive as closely to the car in front of you as safety permits. Please use your horn liberally, especially as we pass through intersections, as we want to avoid anybody from entering the procession. The following individuals have been asked to serve as pallbearers. When I call your name, if you could please stand next to Mrs. Fajerstein's casket. Michael Beer, Samuel Fajerstein, Jacob Fajerstein, Barry Veit, Ari Roth, and Nico Zeldas Roth. At this time, I'm going to ask everyone to please rise as we escort the casket, the rabbis, and the family from the chapel.